What's appropriate? Is it mayor or mayor-elect?
Randall's fine. They have us on the timer.
He's like, you're on my time, don't ask. When you think about progress in the school systems in Birmingham, what does that look like to you? What does that mean to you?
One, thank you for allowing me to be here, but as it relates to progress, I think the first thing is the commitment level from adults. I like to talk about what's our commitment level as adults to our children. Honestly, I don't believe our commitment level is as high as it needs to be. And so I would say the first step in progress of how progress looks is as adults, all of us in this room and all the adults across the entire state, or all the adults in the space of education, are we truly committed to and or willing to do anything by any means necessary to invest more in our children? So that's just commitment level. I would say the second space is time. Just flat out, we don't spend enough time with our children. And so for me, progress looks more like us actually spending more time with our children beyond 179 or 180 days a year.
You went through the Birmingham school system, right?
K through 8, yes. Proudly.
So what issue is still in the system that was in the system when you were young?
We have had a culture that's been very adult-driven, not necessarily putting children first. I think that's made its way into, prior to us being on the school board, and we see this in a lot of systems across the nation, being top-heavy, that we're putting all these resources towards the adults who are not close to the classroom. I would say another space in the culture is not allowing the superintendent to be in the space where they are actually in a position to lead the system. So the best example would be, as a board member, I'm more of a trustee of the church. I'm not the pastor. So I shouldn't necessarily be telling the pastor who should be the choir director. In the space of a school system, it's not my job to say who the principal should be, or more importantly, why a principal should stay in that position. And so we should be empowering, by law, our superintendents to make the personnel decision, to have the children, keeping the children in mind, allowing that superintendent to have the power to pick the principal.
That's at the policy level. I want to know sort of at the personal level, as a kid going to school, what are the pervasive problems that have been around since you were a kid?
I still think there's an issue with books. I still get complaints about books, particularly at the high school level. The food is still nasty. Not my words, right? That's what the students tell me. I know that was being silly, but for real, I would say one of the most problems at the child level, based on my own experience, is the space not in the classroom. And so we think about issues in the cafeteria. We think about issues in the hallway. Some of those same issues exist. I still think there's some adult-driven issues that can be better, but.
Okay. I'm just going to let you know, I think he and I could talk for an hour, and our shot clock just went out. So if
Yes.
you don't want that to happen, you should probably give me some more time. Let me know how much time we have left. You've set 4 priorities for the city: safety, education, small business, and revitalization. Now, those, of course, are all intertwined, right? There's intersectionality with all of them. So let's talk about the safety. The city's coming off a really deadly year, one of the deadliest years in a decade. I think there have been 90 homicides in Birmingham so far this year, as of last week. What can you do about safety that will directly impact the education system?
So I think before I can answer that question, for anybody that can hear the sound of my voice, I need you to own what I'm about to say. Last week, a 15-year-old child, while lying in her bed, was killed. And so all of us have an expectation, whether we have a 15-year-old daughter, a 15-year-old niece, a 15-year-old granddaughter, any family member, a person that's 15 years of age, while that child is laying in their bed, of all places, we expect safety there of any other space. It can't be that way. That's not an issue we can be silent about. That's not an issue we can sit on the sideline about. Her memory, her family. Our community is own more than that. And so in the space of crime as it relates to our children, once our children leave their home and walk to the bus stop, get on that bus, come into our school, leave school, and come back home, it goes beyond them being a part of their home. They're now a part of the community, interacting with the community. And we have to make sure the laws that are already on the books as it relates to our schools being safe zones, that we actually make sure they're safe zones. And so even the week before, we had 3 murders in one day. One of our schools had to go on lockdown because it happened right across the street from a K-8 school. These are real issues in our community. And so going beyond just talking about crime as it relates to making children feel safe, we got to make our families feel safe. We got to make sure all of our families within all of our communities feel safe. It's going to require a different approach on how we police. It's going to require some unorthodox ways on how we engage those in the criminal element who we know. Mm-hmm. And it's going to have to take some adult conversations with those who are actually doing the illegal activities to actually say it can't be this way.
And who do you want to have those conversations with them?
I say we have the conversations with the kingpins and the drug lords.
Do you want pastors to do it? Do you want teachers? You want community members?
I think I should start.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can't say you want to lead a city and not have some real frank, open, honest conversations with folk you know who are doing things they shouldn't be doing. Or at a bare minimum, we're prepared to do anything necessary if you're going to keep having it this way. And so what we've gotten to in our community is, it's not just 91 murders. It's how people are being murdered. Innocent victims, innocent people are being killed in the middle of all of this stuff. And so we have to start at a minimum with those who are in that space and we know who are doing illegal activity to say, we want to give you an option to stop, but we're prepared to do anything necessary to make you stop. Mm-hmm. And that includes disrupting where your drug houses are, where your transaction houses are, where your stash houses are. Because that type of crime is hurting innocent people. Mm-hmm. And as a community, again, we can't live that way.
When you talk about small business, there's some people who think business has no business in schools. What do you think about how can small business help education?
Oh, that's easy. When we consider K-12, that generation, or our youngest generation, is the next generation of our entrepreneurs. When we consider our children, right over here, we got 3 options that are being exercised that we need to stop. So these 3 things I'm about to name can no longer be options. That is, when you finish high school not doing anything, when you finish high school doing illegal activity, or when you finish high school doing something that puts you in jail or killed at an early age. So those are no longer options. Over here, we want our children to exercise one of the 3 options. You walk across our stage, and City of Birmingham City Schools has somewhere between 1,100 and 1,300 graduates a year. We want you to exercise the option of either entering college, military, or workforce. Personally, I'll take any one of those options, as long as it's one of those 3. But in the option of going straight into the workforce, what's stopping our children from being entrepreneurs? In my opinion, nothing but adults not necessarily investing more in them. And so how cool would it be when we think about not just our career academies, but all of our small business owners who are in the space and or proximity of some of our high schools to engage our children in a different way to motivate them to be entrepreneurs right out the gate when they finish high school.
Offering apprenticeships, things like that.
Right away.
It's interesting. You've been a person who's been vocal about advocating vocational school. And for a while, especially with children of color, it was like college, higher ed. Tell me a little bit why you think it's important to bring vocational training into the conversation.
So in our state, at some point, we did away with the exit exam, and we went to Dr. Richardson. You can tell me if I'm wrong. We went to everybody taking the ACT as a standard to exit out of high school. And now we're in a different space now. Well, all of us need to just go back to when we were in high school and consider our individual path or our sibling path. I guarantee you, either we didn't want to attend college or university or one of our siblings didn't. And if that was the case, we should be afforded or should have been afforded another opportunity. For 4 years, the only thing, well, not the only thing, I will tell you all, the most exciting thing about being a board member was every May I got a chance to stand on this stage, probably a little bigger than this, and shake every graduate's hand. At some point across that stage, if I didn't ask them, somebody before or after me asked them, but I was able to hear, what college are you going to? Well, it got to a certain point of hearing some of the answers. I knew they were making the answer up just to please or satisfy an adult. That they hadn't applied to anybody's college.
Yeah.
That they only took the ACT because they was forced to. But we know, based on some of their scores, they really weren't entering anybody's college or university, whether a 2-year or 4-year program. And so we know that. Well, then it makes me think again back to when I was in high school. I co-op my junior and senior year. I left high school early every day, and I worked at a grocery store. But now I'm thinking our students have way better opportunities than we had. And if they can actually get training in vocational and or enhance their high school diploma to receive some form of workforce certification or workforce training, then they can actually exercise the option of entering straight into the workforce. And I would say the reason that's important is because when we think about the state of Alabama and when we think about where we want to be as a state, where we want to be as a city, the opportunities around economic development, I think it's selfish as adults if we only are gearing our students towards one track. Let's empower them. Let's literally equip them to say, which one do you want?
Options.
They need and deserve
different people do
options.
different things.
Yes.
Right? So the last one on your list was revitalization. And, I walked around downtown a little bit, and gentrification is happening when a Warby Parker shows up. The fancy eyeglasses like these. So how do you find that magic point when gentrification brings great things to the community, but also takes care of the people who have already been there so that they can stay there? And that includes education, too, as we start building fancy schools and investing money in our schools.
And so at some point, what if we took the same amount of energy and commitment we can find in financial resources towards capital projects and actually had that same commitment towards putting it towards the actual classroom? We would be in a different space. I think as it relates to neighborhood revitalization, and this line where it meets gentrification, I think it goes back to the first thing I said, and that's commitment. As mayor, what's my actual commitment level to the entire city? And so if I'm saying that the city of Birmingham is not defined by downtown's growth, but it's defined by its lowest quality of life neighborhood, that's the same thing I'm saying about Birmingham City school system, that the school system is defined by its lowest performing school. In both of those spaces, that is, in my opinion, that is a great opportunity to hit the reset button. And as Joshua said, or the young man sitting here said, be creative. Hey, what we're currently doing in this lowest performing school or in this lowest quality of life neighborhood is not working. The people who live in this lowest quality of life neighborhood or the children that attend this low performing school, I don't believe there's a commitment issue on their part. I believe the children want to succeed. I believe the families that live in that neighborhood want things to be better. But as mayor, am I assisting and or empowering those people who live in that community, or working with the superintendent and that principal at that school? Are we empowering those children to be more successful? I think we can be better in that space. And so some of it is equity and resources. Some of it is turning up the knob on that commitment level. But I will answer Joshua's question. I'm not sure if he's still in the room to tie into the question you just asked. He's right. It's not enough that I just have hope for that lowest performing school or that lowest quality of life neighborhood. I actually have to have a vision around how do I improve this neighborhood? How do I improve that lowest performing school? That vision has to be supported by a real detailed plan. That plan has to have some priorities, and then we have to fund those priorities. And then we have to turn that commitment level up. And then we have to go leverage additional resources through public-private partnership. And so those, I can get into some more detail if you want me to on that answer, but.
Well, you know, one thing that's interesting, because in one interview I was listening to, you talked about funding for school or resources for school, and you said additional funding, you want additional funding to supply schools, but supply schools doesn't directly mean giving money to the school system.
Yeah, well, this is a great point. So my mother just retired as a school teacher last May, proud AFT member, stepmother. That's not my mom, though.
Hi, Mom. My mom was a public school teacher, too.
My stepmother is a retired teacher, Birmingham City Schools, 33 years. And so listening to them all of these years and then having the opportunity to be a board member and then just paying attention, here's what I believe. The issues that are rooted in educating our children are not the sole ownership of the school system as it relates to K through 12, 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, August through May. That is just totally unfair. We as a city have to commit to an entire educational pipeline, that wall being birth, this wall being when they walk across the stage. And what's that investment and what does that commitment look like across the entire continuum? At a minimum, the start of that is birth to 5. And so whether it's Superintendent Dr. Herring, whether it's all of her principals at her elementary schools, what's the community's commitment to making sure when our children enter K through 5th, at a minimum, they understand the concept of words and numbers. For me, that's investing in early childhood learning centers. That's not necessarily funding for the school system. That's more so public-private partnership. So anybody in this room with Casey, Bloomberg, Kellogg, Sam, Gates, and anybody else, we want to partner with and leverage some additional foundation dollars to make sure we can invest in the entire pipeline. Not just those early childhood learning centers, but what's really happening from 3:01 p.m. to 7:59 a.m.
The next morning.
What's happening Friday through Sunday? What's happening, one of my favorite spaces, those 10 weeks off in the summer.
Yeah.
Right? Come on. The educators in this room, I think as adults, we're not being fair to any of the adults in this room, and we're definitely not being fair to any child who was on this stage if we say, hey, you entered 6th grade, we assess you. We know you read on the 4th grade level, but we promoted you to the 6th grade. We spent 180 days with you. We give you 10 weeks off in the summer, and when you enter the 7th grade, we expect you to be a grade level. Come on now. That's, y'all, as adults, we're wrong for that. I'll say it for you if you don't want to say it. And so in that space, the time is directly attached to commitment. As adults, are we willing to break our tradition of saying this is when the only time we're going to spend with our children if we know they're not at grade level?
When you were on the school board, you were not interested in charter schools.
No.
How do you feel about it now that you're about to be mayor?
Not interested in charter schools. I can explain, though. I can explain. So I'm not sure what's going on in other states. Although I have done some research, I do believe in benchmarking and finding best practices. What I believe in the state of Alabama is the way the law was created, it creates a separate and unequal situation as it relates to investing in public education. So I am going to use the school district I represented as an example. 2 schools in proximity of each other, Barrett Elementary School, Oliver Elementary School, 2 K through 5th elementary schools. let's say a person in proximity of those two schools wants to open a charter school. They're going to pull students from those two schools. And when they pull students from those two schools, the state of Alabama, as it relates to not only funding education on the regressive sales tax, which is silly, the head count or how dollars are allocated towards a school is based on the student head count. Yeah. Those two schools in return lose funding. They thereby lose classroom units. Then we have to make hard decisions where for our K through 5th students, it won't be math, reading, social studies, science, English, history, but the co-curriculum classes that we all had when we were children, band and choir and sports, we're cutting. And then we wonder why those programs aren't successful in our Birmingham City high schools. That's not right.
It was interesting. You answered that very quickly. You had a very definitive answer. Has there been something about a position you had about education where you've changed your mind, where the position has evolved, when you realize, you know what, I'm going to shift my point of view on that?
I have to think. So I came into the school board, like a lot of people that come on the school board. I didn't think I knew everything. I thought I knew a lot. And then I realized I don't know anything. Mm-hmm. But what softened my position was thinking the school board had more of a hands-on role to play in how school systems should operate. And what I realized is I believe fundamentally that school systems, particularly in urban areas, are having the same issues, will operate better if school boards kind of relaxed some of their positions and thoughts and beliefs and allow superintendents to run the play.
You went to Morehouse. You're a Morehouse man. My grandfather went to Morehouse back in the day.
Grandfather's cool.
He was cool. He was cool. What part of going to a historic black college, especially Morehouse, has informed the way you think about education and also has informed the way you think about reforming education in your hometown?
So are there any other HBCU graduates in the room? All right. And so in the space of an HBCU, in my case, Morehouse, I think we all go to a college university. We're going to get our academic career, I'm going to use the word on. We're going to be successful in that space. But our HBCU experience gives us an opportunity as it relates to character development, as it relates to adulting, as it relates to knowing, finding, massaging out who you are, as it relates to being in a space that's different from whether it's an HBCU or not, extending beyond homecoming, extending beyond football. It allows you to be in the space where, outside of academic rigor, in the space of community service, in the space of leadership, in the space of giving back, in the space of friendship, you own it, you believe in it, you cherish it, and then the college becomes a part of you as well.
How do you get all those things you mentioned into your school systems here? Is it teacher training? Is it community meetings? What is it?
I think it goes back to Joshua's question.
Joshua's smart.
Josh is very smart. Is Josh still here? I want to talk to Josh more because...
For real, he's good.
I think it goes back again to that commitment level. How do we put it here? How do we actually implement those things I just named in the Birmingham City Schools? I believe in our superintendent. I'm not even on the board anymore, but I believe she has everything I've just named to empower her principals.
So supporting good people.
Yes. We have to invest in people who have the wherewithal to move our system forward and then get out of the way and let them do their job.
Mayor Woodfin, it's my pleasure.
Thank you.